of Thursday, June 25th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m.
This conference will now be recorded.
So again, welcome to the Southbridge Town Council Special Town Council meeting of Thursday, June 25th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is being held via remote access. And calling this meeting to order pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This special meeting of the town council is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching Southbridge Cable Access Channel 192 or by the remote information noted below. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website at www.ci.southbridge.ma.us as soon as we are able. I say you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Counselor Adam,
Present.
Counselor Catrona,
Present.
Counselor Daniel,
Present.
Counselor Jovan,
Present.
Counselor Manna,
Excused.
Counselor Marquetti,
Present.
Counselor Nash,
Is excused.
and Counselor Steves.
Present.
And Council Lazo.
Oh, sorry, no, Counselor Lazo.
I know he did ask for the call-in information. I'm not sure if he's on or not. Okay. So Councilor Nash at this point is excused. He may arrive late. He said he was delayed. He was not sure if he was going to make it on time or not. So I'll have him as excused at this time. And we'll see if Councilor Lazo is able to log in at all. Item 3, Citizens Forum. This opportunity. Caller 2, are you Councilor Lazo? Okay. Citizens Forum. Is there anybody that wishes to address the Southbridge Town Council on anything that's not on the agenda at this time? Anyone wishing to address the council? We'll go last call. Anyone wishing to address the council on anything that's not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item number 4. Just for those that join us, if you could put your phones on mute, just so we don't get feedback until you're able to speak. If I do put you on mute, it's not an indication of any harm that you did. It's just my opportunity to make sure the meeting runs in an orderly fashion. Mr. Town Manager, just an update as to COVID-19 reopening of town facilities, if you could, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the town council members are aware, the town of Southbridge Town Hall has now been open for a period of 2 weeks, and things are going very, very well. As far as I know, the town of Southbridge and Marblehead are the only 2 towns I'm aware of that are open statewide. There may be more, but those are the only 2 that I'm aware of. We are following all the requirements of the state of Massachusetts. As you know, we have the protective shields in place, hand sanitizer, 6 foot of distancing. We can only use 50% of capacity. We've been averaging between 40 and 60 visitors a day, and things have gone well. Pretty much everybody is wearing masks. When they're not, we're informing them to wear masks unless they have a medical condition. We've been very confident about it. As you know, we've had people at the door, but that's ending this week. So after this week, every department will have sign-in sheets. And then sign-in sheets, just so people understand what they're for, it's for tracing. If God forbid somebody does get sick, we want to know who's been in contact with our staff so we can report back to them if there's somebody that does come down with COVID-19. And people have been great about that process. But every department will now have a sign-up sheet, and the whole town hall will be responsible for if somebody does walking with a mask to talk to people without a mask, to talk to people as they come in. But it's gone extremely well. I'm very positive about the way that the town has handled this, and particularly how the staff has handled this. The town parks are all open with the exception of Henry Street. Henry Street, as you know, we're doing construction of new playground equipment there. The parks are open, and I've talked to other managers and looked at other managers' emails. There's a concern about parks that there really is nobody to monitor social distancing and people wearing masks at the park. So, the signs are all up as required by law. All the notices are there. We've put on Facebook and where we could, the website, to encourage people to do social distancing. I have not seen a lot of people in the parks. There's been people walking dogs. We're not putting up the basketball hoops and stuff until later in the future phases. Library is what we're working on now, is the opening of the town library. As of right now, none of the libraries are open. We are doing curbside book drop off and pickup. That seems to be going very well. Margaret reports to me between 10 and 15 people a day are bringing books there and are picking up and bringing back books there. She has a very good system for making sure the books come in, that they stay on shelves for 3 days and eventually are sanitized and put back in. I will say that the state rules for opening libraries are rather confusing. Obviously, the big concern with the library is if you walk through a library and touch books, then how do you keep them clean for the next person coming in? It looks like through what's going to be described as phase 3, the governor's talking about opening or letting us know when phase 3 will begin. It's sometime after July 6th. That we can open parts of the library for people to come in and sit and use a couple of the computers. Margaret has a plan for how to do that. Me and the health director and Karen were over at the library today looking at the layout of how we would deal with that. But it's very limited. The big issue is you can't touch books because you contaminate them as soon as you touch them. As of right now, none are open. We are developing a plan for opening once we see what the specific guidelines are from the state for phase 3. I'm very pleased at Margaret's performance in terms of developing a plan, being ready to go, deciding on the building, how we're going to keep up bathrooms, how the entrances and exits are going to be used, what's going to be blocked off, what's not going to be blocked off, how we're dealing with the 6 foot of distancing. It's sad because, as you know, people want to use the library. It's a social gathering place, but this disease is making it very, very difficult to have an operating library. So there's a lot of communication with area libraries and developing that plan. We will be ready when the governor gives us more detailed, specific details for how we open a library. The last phase will be the community center, which is in phase 4. That obviously is the population is most vulnerable to this disease, being seniors. And obviously the reason to go to senior center is to gathering groups. We're looking at that. We're coordinating with other senior centers, but that will be the last of the phases that open. So, Southbridge, in my opinion, is in fact, is way ahead of everybody else in terms of its reopening, but we are doing so in a very methodological, in a very determined way to make sure that we meet all the safety requirements. I've worked extensively with our health agent to make sure that's done and to coordinate with our health board, and everybody seems comfortable with our process. But it's gonna go slow, and we have to follow the guidelines. And I must admit, I wish the guidelines were much clearer from a state perspective, but I think they're still trying to figure out this process as we go along. But that pretty much gives you an up-to-date as to what's going on in opening up of buildings.
Does anybody have any questions of the town manager relative to the opening facilities? Councilor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just to the town manager, the pools, are those open now?
I know that they're developing a plan for the pool, and I'm not quite sure if it's opening. I've heard communications or saw some emails back and forth about it going to be open, David, but off the top of my head, I don't know the direct answer for you. I know there's planning for it. I just don't know if it's open yet.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that as far as the pools are concerned, because I think they're allowed to be open, and we should already have a plan for that. And I would just reiterate, to the town manager, like we talked about, him and I talked personally about before, the state has failed in a lot of ways to get proper guidance out there, and they can't match every town and city for city. It's not going to work that way. So when there's a lack of guidance, we have to start providing our own guidance through our health department. You know, I sit on DPH's phone calls all the time, and there is serious lack of guidance from them on a daily basis. So facilities and all that kind of stuff have to move along. So honestly, I understand about the safety is concerned, but the governor's given us a good, at least an outline, and we just have to fill in that outline with our own ideas as long as we're safe. Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Chair.
And just to respond a little bit, just to recognize the state pool is under state control now. A few years back, it was under town control. So now it's the state who is running that pool, working with the YMCA, who is sort of doing the administrative functions for that pool. So that will be coordinated with the state and done according to whatever the governor's outline for opening pools are. So we haven't had any direct involvement in that particular issue. But I understand your issue with the parks, and we're doing what we can and trying to, like I said, I think we're ahead of other towns, but we're still within the state guidelines, and I think that's good.
Just, I'm sorry, I follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Just
Council.
appreciate it.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay. Seeing none. Move on to item 5. Vote to accept the fiscal 2020 CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Funds federal grant in the amount of $140,539,000. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, motion by Councilor Adams, seconded by Councilor Steves. Just for the record, it does appear that Councilor Nash has arrived to the meeting. Good evening, Councilor Nash. Okay, so Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've talked to councilors a number of times about our application for CARES money, as soon as it came out that we could apply, myself and Karen got together and talked about it. We orchestrated a meeting with all the various department heads that are dealing with the coronavirus in terms of costs. And, specifically, we're talking about departments like the health department, police department, fire department, DPW, in dealing with expenses that we had to pay. And I want to be very clear, we're talking about only fiscal year 2020 we can apply for. We cannot yet apply for fiscal 2021 expenses. So we were looking at all the ways in which we needed to get reimbursement and expenses we would make by the end of June. And we looked at, I think you were provided a whole list of what department heads came up with. And Will did a great job in putting together a list of computers we needed. You have to recognize that what we've learned from this is that laptops are extremely important in emergency situations. And we've ordered some laptops to make sure that going forward, if this virus continues, we had people, particularly key people, who can work from home with town laptops versus their own personal laptops. So you'll see that. You'll see reimbursement expenses for the decontaminants, the cleaning supplies, and for the actual cleaning, and all the costs for these meetings, the go-to meetings. So all the protection, personal protection equipment, the tele-networking stuff, all of that has been provided to you. The only kind of issue we're having, and Karen has been working with the Department of Revenue Services on it, is this item that the fire department and health department want to purchase, which is a machine that is sort of a medical waste processor or sanitizer. Because of the cost of the machine, it has to be put out to a formal bid. There's no machine on the state bid list. So there's no way we can meet the bidding requirements in fiscal 2020 to purchase that machine. So Karen has been going kind of back and forth with Department of Revenue Services about that particular purchase. It's obviously going to be pushed into 2021. I think the answer in our discussion with me and Karen today, because she had a call from DRS who said a person was to work on this, and it looks like we're going to be able to purchase it in fiscal year 2021. So we got the $140,000 already on hand. And they did that, the state did that on purpose to make sure that the town didn't have to dip into its own money for a lot of these expenses. So I think it was great that the state gave us that money before we expended some of the expenses. I want to thank Karen for organizing the information, all the department heads for putting together the information. They forwarded it to Karen, Karen packaged it, and then me and Karen actually did the application online for the money in, I don't think it was a week and a half or so before we got the money, right, Karen? It was really fast. So I think it all went through very, very well. one of the big issues that we're dealing with is the cleaning of the buildings. Right now, we have the town hall being cleaned. And when we talk about a cleaning company coming in, and Councilor Marquetti talked a lot about this, they're cleaning all the touch points, the hallways and everything else. And on Fridays, Joel's doing the deep cleaning of the individual offices. So they're doing different types of work. And as Councilor Marquetti was concerned, it's more cleaning than we can do for this particular item. The fire department and the police department are doing quarterly cleaning. So they're having a company to come in once a quarter and clean all their, both their vehicles and their buildings. And right now we're working with the library for when we reopen the library, how we have that cleaned. Again, the library, we're going to have only certain parts of the library open so that we can contain the amount of cleaning that has to be done and to be able to handle that as well. So I think in terms of the CARES Act, we are doing very well in our planning methodology and how we're doing it. And departments are all putting in requests what they think specifically is needed to deal with their departments. 2021 will be a whole new plan as we get into 2021 and we look at how this virus goes and if it expands again or what happens, we'll have to make decisions as to what we need to purchase for fiscal year 2021. But I think we're sitting in good position right now and ready to move forward and deal with the virus as it moves forward. And that pretty much is it. If you have any specific issues to the dollars, Karen can go through it, but it's, you realize the total is about $140,000. Really tonight, we're just requesting you to approve it so we can accept the funds.
Okay, discussion, Council Steves?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things that jumped out at me when I was reading the documents. First off, where's the non-reimbursable 75 grand coming from?
I'm sorry.
If I was reading properly, the costs that you're listing are about 75 grand more than what's being reimbursed, if I'm reading that properly. So where's the other 75 grand coming from?
Is that, and I'm sorry, I had a little hard time hearing you, but I think is he talking about the difference with the CARES money versus the money through the, what's the other public safety grant, Karen?
FEMA.
Through FEMA money. So I think it's 25% is through FEMA, or is it the reverse? 75%, 25% CARES, Karen? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 25% comes from the CARES, 75 FEMA, and then if something isn't eligible, it's 100 under FEMA. It's 100% from the CARES.
Oh, okay. So we're
Yeah,
not actually. It's not any local money at all then.
In any of this,
No local money.
correct?
Okay, good. Okay, good. I misread that then.
The requirements in the grant process is, as I understand it, Gus, and the fire chief and Karen are working a lot specifically on it, is that you first have to apply for FEMA funding before you could get the CARES money, and anything that's eligible for FEMA has to go through first. So that's what Karen's been working on, that coordination of which grant we have to ask money for and make sure that we do it appropriately according to the rules of each grant.
Oh, okay. That kind of nixes most of the other questions I had. The only one that leaves then is, I was curious if we can get is Andy on this call? If we can get some explanation of why the fire department and his department really want the med waste device. What do you actually foresee doing with it?
I just joined the call. I'm sorry, I was at a Board of Health meeting.
So Andy, I could attempt to answer it, but you could do a much better job. He's looking for what the machine actually does. So it just chopping up masking gowns and all that stuff, but get into the more details. I know it can be used for Corona and other things, but I think you're better to explain it than I would.
Okay. Yeah, this machine, actually, Paul and I and Alicia have been trying to find a way to fund this machine for a couple of years now. The hospital, when they did away with their community health department or division, they also did away with our way to get rid of public needles. So of medical sharps. So we've been looking for a substitute for that program, try to institute another program. We've been chasing this machine for 2 or 3 years now, but the monies have been hard to find. This opportunity came through the CARES Act because obviously the fire department, police department, we're all using more PPE than we ever did before. So through the CARES Act, this qualifies as a way to dispose of PPE and sharps. We anticipate that there will be a vaccine for this COVID. They're talking about a vaccine potentially by the end of the year. I think Dr. Fossey indicated that he expects by the end of the year. So we will have an abundance of needles from any any event that we have, any prophylaxis event that we have for the town. So this will help us get rid of PPE. It'll help us get rid of needles. What the machine does is, using distilled water and steam, it sanitizes all, I want to be careful, I'm not going to say medical waste here because there's some things it can't take, but it sanitizes your PPE, your needles, and it grinds it down into micro little pieces that are safe to be literally thrown in the rubbish rather than thrown away as medical waste. So it's a huge cost saving on disposals, and it's a huge benefit to the citizens of the town, our diabetics, our people who are on the cancer treatment. It's just an opportunity to give everybody a place to get rid of medical shops in a legal manner, hopefully reduce the number of shops we see on our streets.
And to follow up on that also is, so how do you intend to let the people know out there that they can use this, and how would that work?
I will tell you the number of calls we get into our office asking for it. That is going to be our initial, we'll be able to guide them to a place that actually works. I've been guiding people to Auburn because that's the only place I know where there is a public disposal place for needles right now. Auburn CVS has a drop box for needles. So I think we should keep it in town if we can and make it a service to our people. I wasn't intending to advertise this hugely. It will spread because the calls come into this office regularly.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Is there anyone else have any comments on this? Last call. I don't think I see anybody. Okay, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Is Counselor Lazo on this call or no? I just wasn't sure.
I don't just call the roll. If he answers, he answers. If not, then.
Okay. Counselor Adams,
Yes.
Counselor Catrona,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Jovan,
Yes.
Counselor Lazo. He's not here. Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Steves.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 6, vote to approve the purchase of a medical waste processor with an estimated cost of $60,000 to be funded from the fiscal year 2020 CARES Act coronavirus relief funds. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Steve, second by Councilor Adams. I think we discussed this, but any additional information anybody wishes to ask on this medical waste project? Anyone? Councilors? Okay, seeing none, roll call.
Chairman Jovan?
Go ahead, Mrs. Carnos. I'm sorry. Wasn't sure if I saw your hand go up or not, so I apologize. Go ahead.
Sure. If I could just ask if this agenda item could be amended to strike out the fiscal year 2020, because we cannot use the 2020 funds because we can't get it out to bid in time. So we still want to pursue purchasing the medical waste processor. And I did speak with the Department of Revenue today, and they said it doesn't look like they want us to return the funds. I'm just not sure how we're going to classify the funds. Maybe they're going to be 21. So if we just don't indicate which year, I think we can still go forward. And then when it's determined, we can report it properly.
So you want an amendment to just strike FY 2020 and leave the rest, CARES Act, Coronavirus Relief Funds?
I'll accept that as a friendly
That's
amendment.
correct. Yes.
Okay. Is there any opposition to the friendly amendment? Okay. So the friendly amendment will be accepted, striking FY 2020. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, roll call as amended with the striking of FY 2020.
Okay. Counselor Catrona,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Jovan,
Yes.
Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Steves,
Yes.
and Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Thank you, unanimous vote. Item 7, vote to ratify the host community agreement between the town of Southbridge and Canterboro LLC regarding the siting of an adult use marijuana establishment retail in the town of Southbridge at 339 Main Street, located at Assessors Map 48, Parcel 206. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Council Catrona, second by Council Steves. Council Steves, would you allow the manager to introduce this, or do you have a question first?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Town Manager. You're muted, Mr. Town Manager.
My apologies. The next three items are host agreements for marijuana establishments. This host agreement is the same exact host agreement with the different names and addresses as we've done in the past for the one host agreement we've already approved. Our town planner has been working with each of these particular vendors or companies to put these on the table. As you know, the town is allowed for a total of 4 of these vendors. So these will be the final 3 if we move forward with this. I have not had a lot of comments by residents. I had my first call actually today, who was concerned about the one that's being located in the old Coop Scoop property about traffic issues, but that's really, I don't think, as much a town council issue as it might be a planning issue or other boards and commissions. As you know, the revenues for this is 3% impact fee that we would get directly, and another 3% that we would get back from the state of the revenues from that are derived from the total revenue that comes into these facilities. I have not taken a position one way or another on these. I think this is really a council decision as to what they want to move forward. I think a lot of people see positive economic development potential as a result of this. There may be some negative, but I think a lot of people would argue the benefits will outweigh any negatives. I believe Eric is on this call, as well as I think a couple of the owners that are looking at doing these projects. And I'll leave it to Eric for any further conversation. I don't know if he wants to make any comments before you turn it over to Councilor Steves, but this is nothing unique. It's pretty much what we've seen in the past.
Thank you. Thank you. Council Steves, did you want to make a comment first, or do you want to have Eric?
I had a couple of points, or several points actually, that I wanted to make that actually apply to all 3 of the agreements, because it's basically the same text in each of them. So I don't know how you want to handle this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so first off, these originally, just for the full council's knowledge in the public, typically these would go to general government first. I had conversations with Councilor Steves about putting them through general government, and he requested that they come directly up to council. So typically we would have a general government subcommittee needed to vet these. Given the current situation that we're in with remote participation, Council Steves asked that they come directly to council. So that's why they have not gone through general government as of yet. So what I'll do is, I think first, we'll just.
I got a comment on this, the 4 marijuana places you're going to allow coming into the town of Southbridge.
Who is this first off? And you have to wait to be recognized.
All right, Rich Vaca.
Okay, so you're calling number 4. All right, so let me just rename you. And when we allow comment, I will have that, I will recognize you, sir, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right. Okay, so first let's have Eric give an overview to the council and to the public about the process about these sites. Then we'll go with Councilor Steves about the questions, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Okay, so I'll turn this. First off, I'd like to thank Eric for participating in this meeting tonight. I recognize he's on vacation and away, so thank you for taking time during your vacation time that you deserved to be here tonight. So Eric, go ahead.
Okay, so, kind of the process is that we are approached by entities looking to locate their, dispensary or cultivation facility, laboratory, whatever it may be, in town. So, I've had these 3 items, the 3 entities have all approached me, and so we started working on draft host agreements, and essentially all that we've done at this point is taken the approved host community agreement for Green Meadows and changed names and addresses and locations, map and lot, that kind of thing, and then presented that back to the entities for their review and, I guess their approval before getting it back to you all for actual town approval for final location. So, we went back and forth a little bit on one of these, but the end result was that to keep things exactly as as I'd written it and as you all had approved for Green Meadows in the past.
Okay. Counselor Steves?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I'll kind of go through the list. I wrote them down in order based on section number. Started section A1. One thing I was curious about, and maybe Eric asked, I think if I don't know what the answer is, where the line says shall include but not be limited to. As I understand the law, they can't sell it anywhere else anyway. Is that phrasing even necessary?
Eric?
Hey, Gus, if you don't mind, I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind telling me which page that is, I'd like to just.
It's section A1, page 2.
Okay.
Where it says, where'd it go? The term gross sales ... shall include but not be limited to all sales occurring at the facility, including the sale of marijuana-infused products sold by the facility. I mean, it's understandable that we're going to get all of those, but does it really need to? Because it's understood it's going to include all of them because they can't sell it anywhere else.
That's a fair point. My only comment to that is that that's what we had in the previous agreements, and so therefore, why change something that has gone through CCC and been approved and has been approved by the council in the past.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I'm fine with it. It just seemed like an odd phrasing. That's all. Section A2. I don't know if we can do this, but does it have to be paid annually, or can we break up the payments into like semi-annual or quarterly payments? And would that make any difference? Maybe that's a question for Karen.
Well, so yes, we could by by agreement in the host community agreement, absolutely stipulate as far as quarterly or biannually payments. Again, we allowed Green Meadows to go through with a single annual payment, and in the interest of fairness to these three entities, I'm not sure that it's any benefit to them to do semi-annual or quarterly payments, or
okay. Okay, I'm fine with it either way. I was just curious on that one.
So, if I could.
Go ahead.
Mr. Manager.
If I could, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Steves, the amount of the annual fee is after the close of the year, so you know exactly what the gross sales are.
Well, that
so
makes sense.
effectively, it's 60 days after we know what the gross sales are. So we're getting it early. We don't want to really have quarterly. We're getting our money up front right after we can determine gross sales and calculate it. So I think in this case, we would want the annual payment faster than quarterly payments.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Under section B2, the late payment penalty, I was just curious about how does that compare to other commercial entities and citizens? I know I'm assuming it's the same thing that we're doing for Green Meadows, but how about other businesses in town when their payments are late? Is that our standard?
If I remember correctly, we did this on the same basis of late fees for taxes, if I'm correct, Eric. Isn't that correct?
I do believe that is correct, yes.
That would be the same as if you were late on your taxes, Councilor Steves.
Okay, that's what I was hoping. Let's see, the next section I noticed that one thing I thought that might be a little clarification here. When you get section D, annual reporting, that's really only that one paragraph. Everything after that should be relabeled as section E, which I would think could be called miscellaneous provisions, and should restart being renumbered because it starts at 3. It's a kind of a little technical thing that doesn't change the text in general, although I do have specific textual changes that I wanted to ask about. I like the one is currently labeled D3. I like that one, the way that's set up, except for, no, that's not the one I want to correct. let's see, under D5, which what is currently D5, the diversion mitigation, the line that says report any unusual behavior in patients, caregivers, customers, blah, blah, blah. I think we can just strike patients and caregivers because this is a recreational facility. It isn't medical.
That may be, but they may actually be selling to medical patients. So I don't know about leaving it in there. I don't know about not. I mean, it's completely up to you. As far as your previous comment, Gus, I do believe that if anything, a community impact fee through D should potentially be all indented. So if you go up to the top after the now therefore, you have 1, the parties agree. 2, in the event of the company obtains, they'll make the following annual payments. Then it's A, community impact fee. B, additional cost payments, da 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 da. C, annual charitable nonprofit contributions. D, annual reporting for host community impact fees. And then 3 is the next bulk paragraph that would go after 2 above, which is the.
Okay, that makes sense too. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
For what it's, again, Mr. Chairman, through you. So for what it's worth, I think in item 5, a lot of this was templated from attorneys working with the state. And I don't think any of this diversion mitigation wording is ours. I think it really came from the state model. So that's why we used it. I think it kind of been, looked at from attorneys and everything, and it seemed to make sense. That's why it's there.
Okay. And then under section D6, the security line, I got to admit, I'm a little leery of having private corporations' cameras watching long sections of public streets. I understand the principle, and I think that is there any way we can do that in such a way that will be able to, so that they can keep tabs on issues that are directly related to their facility without it becoming basically a private surveillance system for the public.
Yeah.
Because I have a bit of a problem with that. And if that was already in Green Meadows, I didn't catch it, but I caught it now, so it occurred to me now.
Again, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think this is really, the police department is going to work with the vendors to determine where those cameras line up.
Right.
So I think it really is going to be subject to Shane or one of his officers reviewing how they line it up. I don't believe they're looking to really look down the street. They're looking for people that might be hanging around the building, that kind of stuff for security purposes. So I think that's going to be a real decision specifically by the chief and his staff. I don't think anyone's intending to look down the street and use it for a surveillance monitor for area activities more as it relates just to the building itself.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. I was just basing that on the idea where it says located to provide an unobstructed view in each direction of the public ways in which the facility is located.
I think that when they're looking at that, they're looking at as it approaches the building and near the building. It's not in any way designed for what you're talking about. And I don't think the chief is looking or the intention is for that purpose.
And that's what I'm hoping too. Yeah. I just want to make sure that doesn't happen. Let's see, continuing down. Let's see, section, numbers 7 and 8. Hold on, let me look here. 7 and 8, they seemed like they were kind of unnecessary since those are covered by CCC rules anyway. But I have no problem with them being in there. It's just repetitive from what they do. Under D19 or section 19. Let's see, here it is. Okay, that seemed like it was kind of phrased oddly to me. Because the way it says, we will collect 3% of the tax imposed on the company, which still is actually, as I understand it, we are able to collect 3% of their gross sales, as opposed to collecting the 3% of whatever the state taxes them at, because that's a much lower figure. Whatever they're paying to the state is much lower than we're actually getting tax, that we're eligible to get taxed for. I think it should be phrased as, we'll collect the tax of 3% on the gross sales pursuant to blah, blah, blah.
Well, I have to look at it, but the way I understand this, Councilor Steves, the first 3% is considered like an impact fee.
Right.
next 3% is a tax that the state issues on gross sales.
Right.
And then the state just passes that down to us. So that, if we had that in the act or didn't have it in this act, that's the way it works for the state. So this language, I think, just dovetails with what the state's going to do. I don't think there's any problem with it. But that, I think, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first 3% I don't think is considered a tax. It's more like an impact fee. And the tax is only the state collection part. So I think it's okay. I think it works with what the process is for the state. So I think the language is okay.
Yeah, as
Eric,
I
can you respond
understand,
to that?
yes.
Go ahead, Eric.
Ron is correct. The 3%, the initial 3% is the community impact fee.
Right.
The 3% tax is an additional tax that is charged at the point of sale. I believe the total taxes, if that 3% wasn't included, would be 17%. So you have sales tax, marijuana tax. I don't know what it is, but it adds up to about 17%. And then this additional 3% is added on to make the sales tax of the product actually 20%. And then that 3% comes back to the town. Now, whether it has to be in the agreement or not, I would say it's safer if it is in there. But you know, it just says that, look, the town is going to collect this tax from you.
Right. I mean, we would do it anyway. I was just questioning the phrasing to make sure that we making sure that it's phrased in such a way that we get what we need to get.
Yeah,
So,
and the last three items that you had comment on all did come from draft host community agreements that we've gotten from other towns and from the CCC, approved from the CCC. So we use their draft plus other towns that have already approved host community agreements to draft this. So.
Okay, that's helpful. And again, the last point that I had was under section number 23, the last paragraph. I think that since each of these agreements are valid only for 5 years, we can't be negotiating them following 5 years continuous operation. We need to be negotiating in the 5th year before it expires. So I would think that should be rephrased as shall be renegotiated, blah, 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 within the 5th year of continuous operation.
So through you again, Mr. Chairman, Councilor Steves, I'm not even sure at this point in time that we will be allowed to renegotiate a new 5-year contract. As I understand it, is that it's only for the first 5 years. So we'll have to see what the state laws are if we'll even be able to negotiate a future contract. As of the time that we did the initial contract, the maximum allowed was for 5 years. So I think that's an issue to be determined later, depending upon what the state decides to do on these over the long term.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. The state really is kind of changing, hemming and hawing on this one.
Yeah, if they allow us to negotiate, you're right. I mean, if they change the law prior to the 5 years and say, okay, you can negotiate for a longer agreement, then the town manager at the time should start negotiations. Probably I would say a year before the expiration.
Exactly.
But that's something that the town manager will determine later based upon what the law is.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Those are my points.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just to note,
that
Councilor Marquetti may have an amendment on item number 8 just to define the specific map location of the one at the Coop Scoop, just to let you know that may be coming.
Okay, thank you. Go to Mr. Vacker. I know you're out there. I'm just going to allow council to talk first, and we'll make sure you have an opportunity to discuss. Mr. Adams, Councilor Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question to Eric or the town manager. You mentioned, and I don't know if it's for this one or for the other two, but you said they may be selling to medical because this isn't that's not the host agreement for this.
I'm sorry, Councilor Adams. What I said was that they may be selling to medical patients, not that they would be a medical facility.
Okay.
Basically, what we found has happened is many of the retail shops end up drawing much of their revenue from medical patients. They find it's easier to just go to a retail store. It's faster, the whole 9 yards, than going to a medical specific location.
Okay, all right. So I just want to clarify that. I just
I'm sorry for not being clear on that.
no worries. The one thing that I had a concern about here is, and after a long thought and process, especially specifically for this one right here, that's going to be on Goddard and Main, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, this is the one, right? Yeah. My only concern here, and I'll thought long and hard on this one, was the fact that where the location is at. But obviously, if this goes through, the planning board is responsible for processing this. So in that case, if they can't negotiate, the planning board doesn't like the area, and they don't feel that it's a good fit or whatever it may be legally wise, will this host agreement become null and void, or will they just have to change an address and it has to come back to us?
That's a good question. I believe that, in my mind, I would say let's look for a new location and or a potentially more suitable location, and then come back to you to amend this host community agreement.
Okay.
I think that's completely up to the applicant. And I think if they completely, let's say they don't get their special permit in that location,
Right.
and they decide that they're not going to locate in Southbridge at all, I think it would be up to myself, to come back to you as the council to rescind that host community agreement, as it would be
Okay.
null and void.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. That's all I had, Mr. Chair, for now.
I'll recognize Council Stevens in a second, but just as a follow-up to Eric, I do believe Meadows came back and we amended their host agreement because they changed their location from the lot that they had purchased to the mill building. So
That
they
is
did
correct,
come
yes.
back. So I would think on past precedent, we would require that they came back. Okay. Council Marquetti, do you have something right now on all four of the agreements, or do we want to talk specifically about this one?
On this
in
one,
general?
and all of them really, I really don't have a problem with the location. I can't imagine there'd be any place in town that would be a good location. I mean, so it's always going to be a problem no matter where you go. It's not like we have a marijuana row somewhere where all the shops would be located. So I have no problem with the location. Thank you.
Okay. So before we get into the specific presentation on this location, I will recognize Mr. Vacker because he did have a concern about the agreements themselves. So I will recognize Mr. Vacker right now for 3 minutes pursuant to the town council rules. And all I ask, Mr. Vacker, is that you please state your name and your address, please.
Rich Vacco, 444 Worcester Street, Southbridge, Massachusetts. All right, I'm just gonna, some people are aware, town manager, board of health, aware of the things I've done for Southbridge. I've been here for approximately about 5 years. I'm out of Worcester and Oxford. This is my girlfriend's hometown, Brenda Stock. And she was, when I first met her, she showed me around the town. And I was actually, I've done a lot of cleaning up of illegal dumping and cleaning up communities in about 10 other towns, including Oxford. So I began cleaning up the town. I picked up about 25,000 illegally dumped tires in this town. The Quinnebog River, over 1,000. The two junkyards in town. Chico's junkyard dumped 20,000 tires up there. 10,000 of them the power station took away. There's still 10,000 tires more. They were supposed to stop dumping tires back in 1993 by the Department of Environmental Protection, but they continue to keep doing it and then abandon the property. So I've cleaned every cemetery, every trail. I've given my heart, blood, and soul to the town of Southbridge, more than any other town that I've ever cleaned up. So as far as this marijuana go, just to let you know something personally about me, back in the 1980s, I was a very heavy marijuana user. And large percentage of the class of 1987 in the 80s were all big drug users. Most of the kids I started smoking marijuana with graduated to heroin. bank robbery, various other charges, right? In fact, I don't know if any person that I grew up with that smoked marijuana, right, heavily, I'm talking about taking a few puffs here, we smoked Cheech and Chong joints, right, that ever amounted to anything. So they came to Oxford, and they said that this is going to be medicine, and it's going to help people, right? So this is what Cultaleaf said. So they convinced the people of the town of Oxford to let them opened up. Shortly after, they came to the Chief SAD and Lieutenant Marcelonis of the Oxford Police Department, and they said, we want to sell recreational. At first they said no. Eventually they got it passed, right? They had their big grand opening not too long ago before this virus happened, right? Nobody showed up. They had a shuttle bus there, right? Nobody's down there, okay? They got a website called weedmaps.com that shows all the marijuana places on there, right? So these marijuana shops, they're coming in here and promising you all this money they're going to bring in, right? It is nonsense, okay? Because you can go down to Oxford and watch it. Not that many people come in. You know what I'm saying? So one of the problems about Southbridge is it has a bad reputation. And one of the bad problems it has, right, is bad problem with heroin, okay? The little bit of money you're going to get from these marijuana shops is going to have to be spent on additional budget for the police department to police the increased drug activity, right? Based on my opinion, as a former druggie myself, I would say that you would reject the money that these marijuana shops are going to give you, right? And do things to better the town of Southbridge, like removing those 10,000 tires up at Chico's before there's a tire fire and more mosquitoes breed, right? There's a lot of things that can be done to improve the town of Southbridge. Like your blight on community ordinance, start enforcing that more. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think this is going to be a positive thing for the town of Southbridge, you know, based on my history. You know what I'm saying? And the things that I know about drugs. Okay? So, I mean, you can do what you want to do, but just like Casella that came in here and said that about the landfill, how it was going to be a great thing, and left a mountain of trash from everybody in the state of Massachusetts, they don't care. And neither do these people. You know what I'm saying? So you can do what you want to do, but that's based on my opinion. You know what I'm saying? You know?
Okay, Mr. Becker. Your time is expired. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think I've said it all. I mean, hopefully it didn't fall on deaf ears.
No,
you know?
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Nash?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing. I was just ready to move for extension.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I gave him an extra minute, so he went about 4 minutes. So, okay. So Eric, I guess at this point, if you could please open discussion on this specific agreement. We've had conversations with representatives from this company about where this is going and who these parties are. Again, reluctantly, this is tough because we're in remote session, so we don't even get to see who the primary people are of this unless they're on this, and I'm not sure who's primary. So with this one, Canterbury, could you just introduce this one, please? Who these people are and if they're here tonight?
Sure. I will introduce Nicholas Adamopoulos, who is the attorney representing, I'm sorry, Canterbury.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Rumsey. Just to go back to Mr. Steve's request earlier, that A1 paragraph, the reason it's written that way is because ultimately the CCC can give out 3 licenses to an entity. So the reason that it says that specific facility is just so that the town gets the money from the one in Southbridge and not from gross sales statewide if any of these entities ever opened up anywhere else. And then similarly for D6, that security provision that you had answered, that's based straight out of the regulations about where those security cameras ultimately need to go. And all the companies ultimately work that way, that they'll bring in these security companies. They're going to be based upon what the regulations require and not go any farther out than that or come in any closer than they have to be. Concerning this specific entity, it's located, the proposed location is 345 Main Street. I know it says I believe it says on the 339. It's ultimately 339 through 345, but the ultimate section is 345. It's the old Photoshop. There are 2 municipal lots close by to the proposed location. Canonbro is holding its community outreach meeting on Monday, June 30th. All the letters according to the CCC regulations have been sent out. Further, there has been a long-term lease acquired for the use of that property. The spot had been vacant for a while from what we were told. And we have entered into a lease agreement that would run the length of this initial agreement with the town of Southbridge. Concerning the specific owner, he is a town resident of Southbridge. He's been in the town for several years. He's a retired veteran, and he's also a minority. So he'd be one of the first minority owners in the state of Massachusetts. I believe at this point, there's only 2 or 3 minority owners in the state. Further, under the agreement, as I'm sure all of you read, you guys are guaranteed the $35,000 per year for charitable use. We would work closely with the police department and the town council to identify charities in the town that would be willing to take the proceeds. And also, once again, you begin the 3% on gross sales, as well as the 3% per user that the paragraph that Mr. Steve mentioned. That comes directly from the user, similar to a meals tax that Canonbro would collect on behalf of the town. And the 3% gross would come out at the end of the year. I would state that there is a store similar to this site in Mills, Massachusetts. Last year, they generated somewhere between $3 to $5 million. So the hope is that Canonbro would be around that same amount, and the town of Southbridge would get about 3% based upon that in the first year of operation.
Okay. Anything further, Attorney?
I have nothing further about this specific entity. I would answer any questions if the council has any.
Okay. Did you say, what was the date of that outreach meeting? I don't know if I wrote down, I thought you said June 30th? Monday, June 30th?
Yes, this Monday coming up, so.
That's the 29th, not the 30th. You did say the 30th, so.
So I believe it's June. I apologize. It is, I can check my calendar. Hold on 1 second. I have the letters right here. June 29th, it is Monday.
Okay. Just want to make sure we had that dates right there. Okay. And what time is that at?
That'll be held at 6:30. At the facility, right now we have, there's a back parking lot. We're going to have it socially distanced. If the weather does not cooperate, we would have the parties come into the property socially distanced. We have spoken to the police chief about that.
Okay, thank you. Questions on this specific entity? Comments? Okay. Is Council Lazo out there? Just want to make sure. I see no. I did text him, but I did not get response. So is there, seeing no, Council Nash, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to take a minute to make a comment because, well, I certainly can appreciate the statement that was made by the resident, Mr. Vaca, I believe it was. My position on moving forward with these sorts of establishments and this sort of agreement has been steady and remains steadfast even now. So I can appreciate that we have a few of them before us tonight, and I'm going to continue to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor Marquetti?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that a majority of the residents of Southbridge voted in favor of having marijuana facilities, so I'm in favor of this. I'd also like to suggest to all of these marijuana operations that please consider donating some money, some charitable money to the schools, because the schools are the ones that are really hurting right now, and they need as much help as they can get to buy material and technology that they can use. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Steves?
Thank you. To follow up what Councilor Marquetti said, I completely agree with what you were just saying, Mike. I think we do, as a council, we need to be kind of careful about advising where they send donation money. We had this discussion with Green Meadows, and that's one of the reasons why it's phrased fairly vaguely. because they kind of have to make that decision and let us know and we can maybe give them some suggestions, but we have to be really careful how much suggesting we do. Because then it starts getting into the line of some of the questionable dealings that the federal government was looking into. We want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Steves. I know we had quite the extensive conversation on that. My only comment to the resident is we did have extensive outreach on this. We've talked about this for over a year, and we asked for a lot of input. So I think I made my stance known on the particular locations that I thought, but my understanding, town manager or Eric can, in order for these facilities to even go to planning to see if they will be sited there and go through that process, they need a host agreement. Is that correct, Eric?
That is correct, yes.
So even to begin the process of even having discussions about citing this is the only first step that they can do to even have those, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, all right. Any, Councilor Steves?
Actually, I just wanted to ask if Nick could give a quick summary of the time frame. He mentioned it at the cannabis presentation, but just to summarize what the time frame is for the people who might be watching this at some point.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Steves. Just going back to the school part that Mr. Marquetti brought up, I have spoken to the proposed owner of this establishment. He would love to donate back to the school. That's something we have to work with both the town and the school about, because some towns are accepting it. Some school districts have said that they won't take it. So that would be based upon obviously the school committee and things along those lines. The proposed timeline would be if we were able to get this host agreement put together and have a successful community outreach meeting on Monday. The hope would be to submit our application with the CCC by the middle of July. Usually you get an RFI back from the CCC within about a month to 2 months if there's any further information that they need. And the hope would be to have a provisional license from the state, hopefully sometime this fall, early winter. During that time period is obviously when we would work closely with the planning board and go through any of the bylaw requirements that the town has in place. That would include having a traffic study done for this location, bringing out architectural plans, and having a security company make a presentation to the planning board, as well as working with any municipality departments, the police department, the fire department, the health department. They're all going to be intricate to making sure that this facility works correctly and making sure that they're happy with the plans and proposals that go in there. I will say this, the regulations for the CCC are very extensive. There are a lot of plans and policies that we have to put together as part of our application. And all those plans and policies will be included as part of the application that goes to the planning board. So there'll be a lot of information that the planning board will get ahead of time, including that traffic study, to ultimately see when they make their decision if they want to give the special permit. The hope would be that this facility could be open sometime in the spring if there's no further holdups because of the virus. I know that the CCC has had no issues with their licensure department during this whole shutdown. They've been working remotely, and they've been actually going through the proposed licenses at the same pace that they were prior.
Thank you, Council. Any further discussion? Any comments on this particular proposal? Any comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Adams,
Yes.
Counselor Catrona,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Jovan,
Yes.
Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Steves.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 8. Thank you, sir. Item 8, vote to ratify the host community agreement between the town of Southbridge and 208 Worcester Street LLC, doing business as Cannabis, regarding the siting of adult use marijuana establishment retail in the town of Southbridge at 208 Worcester Street, which is assessors map 22 parcel 65. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Council Steves moved, seconded by Council Catrona. Mr. Town Manager?
Yeah, just a brief comment. I'm not going to comment on all of these because it's just same agreement, different things. But I believe Councilor Marquetti, this is the one that you wanted to fix the motion for the specific location for this one. Am I correct? This is the scoop one.
All right. If I may speak, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Council Marquetti.
I asked the town manager this morning if this was correct, because there are 3 parcels with that number. There's map 22 parcel 65A, B, and then there's 65 with no letter. The one that Scoop is 65B. So I was just asking if it doesn't matter. If it matters, then probably we should change it to 65B. I wasn't
Okay.
sure if it mattered or not, that's all.
I'm going to defer that to Eric. He is the town planner. Eric, do you have any comment on that?
Since there are 3 parcels that have that lot, yes, it should be 65B.
Okay.
And I
All right.
apologize for that oversight.
Well,
Okay.
that's all right.
So,
It's friendly.
amendment, would
Right.
everybody accept that? Any discussion on that? So you would make sure, Eric, that this final agreement would make sure it includes the 65B, right?
Correct.
All right. And who are the principals on this, Eric?
Again, this is Attorney Adamopoulos is the representative.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is located at 208 Worcester Street. It's the old Scoop ice cream shop. On that property, there's about 40 spots already. The community outreach meeting for this occurred on June 16th. About 10 to 15 people attended. It was a very positive meeting. There were some questions about the traffic. There was I believe the CFO from United Lens was there. He has forwarded some videos that they have of the road, because I guess some of their workers who park across the street have had some incidents with traffic on that road. We did explain to him that there'd be a traffic study done on this property. We'd work with the planning board and United Lens if they'd like to be involved also, of potentially trying to work to find any resolution to the, I believe there's some speeding issues on that road. The primary principal of this property is Peter D'Elia. He's the former CFO of the St. Vincent's Med City operation. He brings a wealth of business experience. Concerning this agreement, he has reviewed it. We've gone through all the sections. We're in full agreement with the proposed agreement. Once again, we would work with all the entities with a strong interest in hiring locally and making sure that that $35,000 per year is earmarked for either it's veteran homes, the schools, but local charities in Southbridge to make sure that the money is staying within the town that is allowing the facility within it.
Okay. Any discussion on this one? I certainly do look forward to the planning board meetings to make sure those concerns are addressed on both the Main Street location and Worcester Street. I know Worcester Street is heavily traveled, and the police department tries to do a good job. So anything you can do with those partners down there to mitigate and work on traffic issues would, I think, be a welcome sight as you work through the process through the planning board. Councilor Steves?
Yeah, just a quick comment that Councilor Marquetti and I were at that meeting. And I just wanted to say that I think that's a good use for that particular site, provided that the traffic issues can be addressed properly, because there is definitely a safety concern. But I would love to see that building get reused before it falls apart. And I would say the same. I should have said the same thing about the Photoshop earlier too. It'd be nice to see something come in there that would be actually drawing people to town rather than just walk by and see a derelict building.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Councilor, did you, are there any preliminary like draft drawings or anything about what they're going to do with that? I know, like, I get the whole village photo. There's not going to be much more outside of maybe outdoor cosmetic and security for that building. But has the has the owner of this property presented any or has any drawings that they could forward to the council, get an idea of how that would look in that area? I know we went through that, on our first approval, they had sent us some real good like snapshots of what potential look of that area would be. Is there anything that your client has?
For the first property, the one on Main Street, the proprietor has drawn out his proposals to the security companies that we're working with and the architect that's going to be coming in. But those are more on draft paper to kind of lay out what the square footage is going to be, where the terminals would be proposed, and where the security stations would be. For the one located on Worcester Street, ultimately right now we don't have any drawings, but that location has 2 doors already built into it, so there'll be an entrance and an exit. Concerning the traffic flow, we would have one entrance as a way in, and the other side as a way out to protect that. But right now, there'd be very little done to the outside of the one on Main Street. We'd like to maintain the look that it is. Further, the CCC ultimately restricts anything that we can kind of put onto those buildings. There's not going to be any neon signs. There's going to be a very little sign that'll be put up, kind of saying what the name of the store is. And further, there would just really be some blackened out windows and security measures put in, because you can't be able to look inside the facility and see what's in there. For the one on Worcester Street, we're going to utilize that same building as it is. There's going to be heavy upkeep to the outside and inside to make sure that the property looks better. I know that it hasn't been used for a while, so the hope is to make sure that both of those facilities are top notch. If you've, I haven't personally gone to many of these stores, but if you kind of go online and look at them, the insides are incredible. That's really the selling points to end users. So both these facilities will be maintained at a usage level that it's currently not at, because that's going to be the driving point to bring in foot traffic.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to it. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Catrona,
Yes.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Jovan,
Yes.
Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Steve,
Yes.
and Counselor Adams.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 9. Thank you, sir. Item 9, vote to ratify the host community agreement between the town of Southbridge and Mellow Tiger LLC regarding the siting of an adult use marijuana establishment retail in the town of Southbridge at 69 Hook Street, a portion of 67 Central Street, which is assessors map 35, parcel 28. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Council Adams, seconded by Council Marquetti. So I guess I'll just go to Eric. Eric, if you can introduce parties pursuant to this request.
Certainly. So the interested party in this for this host community agreement, forgive me, is Mr. Gary Baldiga. Gary and I have spent months communicating back and forth regarding this and regarding siting locations, a number of different factors that we've looked at over the past probably 3 or 4 months now before sending this to you. So I will cede the floor to Mr. Baldiga.
Good evening, Mr. Baldiga. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Council.
So do you want to give us about your project?
Absolutely. I just introduced myself again. I am one of 3 partners involved with the Mellow Tiger team. We are in the stages of working with basically a consulting group out of Boston, Cannabis Consultants, Greenlight Business Solutions. We're teaming up with them just to help us through this process. It is our first venture. We are not a chain or any type of organization other than 3 partners getting together with an idea for Southbridge. We have some ties, or I have some ties to the community, and I do have a packet that I would have liked to had you folks have in front of you before the meeting. We do have a nice presentation that was put together with all the points regarding the improvements we'd like to do, the security measures, the things that we find important as far as not being a nuisance or how we can make a positive impact on the town of Southbridge as a whole and work with all the departments in the city, in the town council.
Okay. Could you cite specifically, I think I have an idea of what building this is, but for the public that's listening and the councils that are here, what specific property this is?
Yeah, 69 Hook Street. It's part of 67 Central Street. It is the former auto parts store. We're taking approximately a 9,500 square foot building that already had some work done by the landlord. And with his blessing, we have already signed a 5-year lease to do improvements and hopefully get our business up and running. We're going to do everything from the outside aesthetics to the landscape to lighting. We're going to take a part of town that, some may consider not as desirable to make it very appealing. I know it's a high traffic area. I'm out there quite a bit. I see the traffic flows from all directions, and we're going to do our best to, kind of go along the guidelines of what the other groups are going to do. We want to make it something that the people want to come to Southbridge for, something that's a positive impact on the town, the local residents. We are also going to try to hire any qualified individuals that are locally residents. We're going to work with local banks, insurance companies. We do have an architect that has drawings that I'd like to submit to you folks as part of our presentation. We've already done quite a bit of extensive work, with the hopes of getting this host agreement. We've put a lot of time into this. We're very serious. We want to help out the town. We as a group have many ideas on different charities, and we would go above and beyond, what you guys are recommending. That's just how we've always been. We give back to the communities.
Okay. Questions? Councilor Steve? You're muted, Councilor Steve.
Turn it on. There it goes. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, one of the things that immediately, first of all, again, as I said with the previous proposals, it would be nice to see that a building like that that's been vacant for so long do something useful, definitely. One concern that immediately jumps out at me, though, is how are we going to address this particular situation if we're also looking at that place for a fire station? That could be a bit of an issue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was my first thought. And
Okay.
maybe that's more directed to the rest of the council than Mr. Baldiga per se. But were you, Mr. Baldiga, did anybody tell you that there was a proposal to put a fire station in there?
I was told through the town planner did mention at one point that was a prospective site for the town's fire department. But speaking with the landlord and the owner of the property, which is the landlord, to our knowledge, no, there was nothing concrete, meaning there was nothing moving forward with the fire department.
There isn't at the moment. That's true. You're right. Okay.
No, it is true. I'm just surprised that on a personal front that, obviously, I'll reserve my comments because we've had several meetings about locating a fire station there, and the fact that it hasn't been filtered back up to the council that this was a potential site that the council had already approved as the siting of a fire station, that there was no heads up to the council that this specific agreement was to that piece of property.
That was my concern too.
Yeah, so I know we're a ways off on possibly trying to fund a station, but to have, and I know as chair, I want to try to limit my comments, but I guess I'll step down as chair for a minute and turn it over to Council Daniel so I could speak. Truthfully, that as chair of the Fire Station Building Committee, we worked for the last 4 years, and to have nobody from the town side, town manager's office, not tell us or communicate to us that this, in fact, is the siting of a potential marijuana facility is upsetting. But that's not to you, Mr. Baldiger. It's not a reflection of you and the hard work, but principals in the town government knew that this was a long time project that we've been working on for some time. So I'll just leave it at that. So any other comments from Councilor Steves?
Yeah, this one is through you to Mr. Baldiga. Do you have a public outreach meeting scheduled yet?
We are working on that right now. We're hoping within the next 2 weeks tops that we're going to have that, and that information will be provided to you folks. As mentioned, we do have a pretty detailed layout, and I'd really like to get that to you guys. It's going to explain quite a bit of what we anticipate, what it's going to look like, what we're going to be doing to the area, how we will benefit the town. And so, yes, I will get that information to you guys immediately once we finalize it.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Hello. My name is Tyrone Gomes, and I actually am a part of Greenlight Business Solutions.
Okay.
I thought it might be worth mentioning to the city council that Greenlight actually works very closely with the CCC, and we've been brought on to make sure that these guys not only are able to be successful, but are fully compliant from a regulatory standpoint. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion?
No, Mel Tiger's really excited to be operating or potentially being in your town. So we're motivated to make sure that we are of service to the town and communicating at a high level. I personally have been operating in the cannabis space for about 10 years now. I have multiple licenses in California. So, our team is really, really informed and experienced. And just want to let you know that, we're going to do everything in our power to be a positive, to have a big positive impact on your town.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, and no doubt that on my end, I fully support, because the town did speak on this. I'm just I can't speak the location because again, we've worked with the town planner's office, the economic development office. We've spent money to reconfigure La Rochelle Way to make sure for the potential downrange of fire station at the location. We've invested a lot as a fire station building committee for the potential of that location. I understand things change, but that's my only concern, is the location. Any other discussion from councils? Any other discussion? Seeing none? Roll call.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Jovan,
No.
Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Steves,
No, for the same reason Councilor Jovan did.
Counselor Adams,
Yes.
Counselor Catrona.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, moving on to the final agenda item this evening. Thank you. Item 10, discuss the status of town manager Ron St. Angelo's evaluation for FY 2020 pursuant to his employment contract, take any necessary action on same. So this is brought forward just as a discussion. Do you have something to say before I continue, Council Adams?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to make note before we moved on to this agenda item that I believe that's the fourth and final, if all four of them open up over there for the town of Southbridge. I know we had a town just a few towns away from us that kind of made a mistake on how many adult use retails they are allowed to have. I just want to make sure we don't do the same.
Yeah,
we don't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So in regards to this is just to have a discussion because it's raised with concern by Councilor. As everybody knows, the town manager's contract stated that the town council shall review and evaluate the town manager on or before June 30th, 2019 for FY19 and June 30th, 2020 for FY20. Said review and evaluation shall be based on the goals and objectives developed by the council and the town manager. Further, council chairperson shall provide the town manager with a written summary of the evaluation and findings and shall provide an adequate opportunity for him to discuss his evaluation with the council. So pursuant to that, on myself and Vice Chairman Daniels had a discussion about the evaluation instrument. We had approved the evaluation instrument last year. Vice Chairman Daniel had integrated the current goals and objectives into the evaluation, developed the evaluation score sheet, and we were prepared to go forward with that. That was on May 30th. On June 2nd, I sent an email to the town manager regarding the evaluation. And again, it was as per your contract agreed, we completed an evaluation by June 30th, 2020. My goal in this was to make sure that we protected all the duties as outlined in the contract that we had as a council. That was sent to town manager on the 2nd. There was communication back and forth between myself and the town manager regarding this goals and objectives, and he brought some concerns up that about the evaluation and about conditions that we're currently under, and wished that given the fact that the town manager will be departing on August 21st, and some of the COVID-19 related issues, that he wished not to participate in the evaluation at this time, and wished to have it waived. So in hindsight, I should have brought it to the council at our last meeting to update you all, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And I apologize if I didn't. So he wishes to waive that part of his contract. So I'm putting that out there because the council said that we really, in retrospect, we should, as a council, make sure that we're all on the same page. So I just want to have a discussion about that. And given the fact that we have to have this publicly, this is the time to do it. So, I certainly understand and appreciate the town manager's position that, term of employment ended, and perhaps the evaluation may have some implications due to the COVID situation and all that. So, Mr. Town Manager, if you want to add anything first, and then we can have if anybody has questions, they can bring it back. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, in the last 3 months, the world has changed dramatically, and I have not been working on the goals and objectives that were established by the town council because of the crisis. And many of them I couldn't work on if I wanted to, with the building being closed and everything. It doesn't make sense to evaluate me on goals and objectives that were possible for me to fulfill. My responsibilities in the last month have been completely different than I think any of us ever suspected them to be. So I said to the chairman, I think it would be unfair to do an evaluation based on a set of goals and objectives that was simply just impossible for the meet. So, and frankly, I don't know why it would make sense with me leaving anyway. There's no real value to it. So at this point, I'm asking to be waived because I don't see any positive way that this can be done given the COVID situation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll open up to discussion. Councilor Steves?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm inclined to actually agree with the manager on this one. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me either. I have no problem with waiving it.
Okay, thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Marquetti?
I'm fine with that too. It doesn't really make any sense. Thank you.
Okay. Any other councilors? Councilor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I completely understand where the councilors are coming from on this. And one thing that I thought long and hard on was the fact that it is part of the contract that we all agreed with. I understand that world situations change things, but it never stopped others to be evaluated on their performance. And the fact that I think I would say all 9 of us that are in here that would be evaluating the town manager should use some common sense when it comes to the fact that you do have a pandemic that we've never seen before in our lifetime. And we should take that into account and maybe take a look at some of these goals and objectives while we're here that were attainable prior to the actual pandemic or the local emergency being set by the town council. I'm not going to fight hard on this one. I do believe the town manager and us as town councilors should review and give an evaluation to him. And by all means, he should be able to come back and have a conversation with us at the same time. I don't fully agree that things couldn't have been done or communicated with us during this last 3 months. But again, if the majority of the town councilors believe that we should skip this and move along, I think something official, either be a vote or a letter from all of us to be able to be placed in the file of the town manager and not just via email. Again, unfortunately, I know pandemics don't happen all the time, but emergencies do, and there's a lot of evaluations that still take place, and I can give you a million examples of them. So I just say that I'll let the other councilors speak, or we can, or however the chair would like to move forward with this. And that's all I've got to say right now. Thank you.
Council Catrona?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, I respect everyone's opinion. And I couldn't agree with Councilor Adams more. I think, yes, we had emergencies that came up in town, but I think what we're hearing tonight from the town manager's excuses, which we've heard in the past. We should get this done. It should be done, and then he can move on. I think Councilor Adams stated correctly, if we choose not to, then there should be a vote of the council, but this should be something that should be at least in his file as he moves forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager?
So let me be very clear. The terms of the contract is that we would have goals and objectives based upon fair standards, and me having the ability to be able to meet those standards. To evaluate me on standards that have been set that are impossible for me to meet would be clearly against the contract that was agreed upon by me and the town. Just to be clear, it would be unfair. It would be a breach of the contract, in my opinion. And obviously, council can vote the way it was, but I would look at this as having no potential to damaging my reputation if you were to evaluate me based upon things that there was no way that I could achieve. This is not a evaluation just on my performance, but an evaluation based upon the goals and objectives that were established and agreed upon by the town council and me when we agreed to setting up those goals and objectives.
Councilor Adams?
Although I agree with the town manager on certain areas of this goals and objectives, there are plenty of them that were never even met before the pandemic even hit. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Adams. I certainly understand the town manager's point, but I do recognize what Councilor Adams is saying. There were several things that were due before March 15th that, clearly could be evaluated on. So I look at it as and my communication with the town manager certainly was, because he did raise the point that he believed that anything we did damage his reputation. And I just wanted to clear for the record, that my response to him was that, and I'll just read it into the record. I understand your concern with the implications that COVID-19 has placed on all of us, and I'm disappointed in the characterization that any evaluation would be done in a manner that would damage your reputation. I do understand that given your leaving in August, an evaluation may not serve any purpose. My point in contacting you is that your current contract called for an evaluation to be completed by June 30th, 2020. And as chair of the Southbridge Town Council, I have done everything in my power to make sure that we follow the tenets of said contract. If it is your intent that you wish to waive this requirement of the contract, please send me a written memo about same, and I will advise your entire council. Certainly, as chairman, I have tried my best to keep the town out of any legal liability, and to make sure that we handle and treat everybody in a fair and equitable manner. I look at evaluations as personally, the evaluation instrument as a reflection of what needed to be accomplished and to set goals and performance standards for the next year. So while we may have discussion about what the goals and objectives and what any potential positives and negatives that may have been done by performance, we would use that evaluation as a springboard to set certain goals and performance standards for the following year. Given the fact that the town manager will be out of the office for 3 weeks and then back for maybe 3 weeks, does it serve a purpose to give an evaluation that would, not sure how it would come out. I would suspect some things for the future. So I have no problem with waiving this right now, and let's move on with the more important things that we have to do, such as the budget issues that we have to address and reorganization of council and getting back to regular meetings. But if the will of the council is to pursue a written evaluation, despite the manager's wish to waive it, we will get that evaluation out and get it done in a timely manner to make sure that those councilors that are departing have an opportunity to write something, and then I would write the summary, which would be presented sometime in July. But I'll open that up to any further discussion from anyone. Councilor Nash?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not thrilled that we're discussing this on June 25th, of course, but I appreciate that you've clarified and qualified how we've gotten to this point. Looking at all sides and all angles right now, and of course, beyond submitting an evaluation as a departing term-ending counselor, in the past, we've had a forum open meeting where we discussed said evaluations, and I'm not willing to participate beyond my term, quite frankly. I can understand the perspectives that have been presented here tonight, but provided we are not in violation of terms of the contract, I'd have no problem if the town manager or the town council documented a waiver with some sort of paperwork to move forward in such a way that the waiver was had based on all the current circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Daniel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm kind of torn about this, but ultimately I feel that an evaluation wouldn't serve any real purpose in terms of helping to progress the town. So at this point, I would support a waiver. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just not to belabor this any longer. I understand the waiver and I respect that waiver part, especially being on the 25th of June when this is due by the end of the month. It is not fair to the town manager either. So I would go along with it. I just wanted to make sure that we're doing everything properly, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Steves?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a motion that we put a note into his file saying that we are formally waiving this review pursuant to the contract.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on that? Councilor Nash?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the council, I would prefer that we have it a step further and request, if it's not part of the motion, that the town manager also submit documentation that this, whether or not it originated from him, but he is in agreement with these steps, considering whatever aspects of that contract would have been, I'll say, violated. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, that the memo will be a two-party memo to agree to waive the provision in the contract. Mr. Town Manager?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, the chairman asked that I already formally request for the waiver, and that has already been done and sent to the chairman. So the chairman already has that documentation for me formally requesting that waiver.
Okay, we'll memorialize it in a letter, though, to make sure that it's signed correctly and just not, I think that was the some of the concerns by the council, is not that it's just an email, that it isn't a formal letter with that signed. So we will work on that.
Sure.
Correct, Councilor Nash, that was your concern.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
believe.
I appreciate that. If I missed that as you were introducing or during discussion, I apologize. But if you'll indulge, if council will indulge one more quick set of comments here. I really do appreciate the perspectives that are presented on this particular issue. It's not just about the town manager receiving an evaluation. It's about the town council's obligation to evaluate its town manager regardless of, circumstances going forward. So I certainly appreciate that. I understand that. I take my obligation as seriously as anybody else, but I'm appreciative of the motion that was made by Councilor Steves and the discussion that we've had here tonight. And I think that's the right move for June 25th, 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nash. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Daniel,
Yes.
Counselor Jovan,
Yes.
Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Steve,
Yes.
Counselor Adams,
Yes.
and Counselor Catrona.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you. I believe that's it. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Counselor Jovan,
Yes.
Counselor Marquetti,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Steves,
Yes.
Counselor Adams,
Yes.
Counselor Catrona,
Yes.
and Counselor Daniel.
Yes.
So, motion, before everybody departs, 41 items on the agenda for Monday night, so be prepared. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good evening, everybody.
Look like 70 to me.
That's what I'd like to be. I think this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer.
Hey, Mike. Good evening.